Welcome to the dive in About 5 for third grade addition and subtraction fluency. I'm Kim.
And I'm Brittany.
Let's get started. So we're going to do a first task on the next slide. You're going to be practicing adding multi-digit numbers and using the tools and strategies that you think your students would use to solve these problems. You're going to pause the video and take time with your team to do this.
All right, hopefully you have taken some time to do your first task with your group. Hopefully you've also talked about some of those strategies and tools that your students might use to solve this problem. We're going to use the next couple of slides to talk about those strategies and see if any of those match yours.
Taking a look at our progression with those best standards, in second grade, your students have worked with adding and subtracting whole numbers within 1,000. Now we're just taking it a step further and really working on those fluency skills and making sure that they're comfortable with the different flexibility of numbers and really having a strong number sense. For fourth grade, our students are going to be adding and subtracting with decimals, so we want to make sure that they have a solid understanding of adding and subtracting with whole numbers before we bring decimals into it.
So remember, for this benchmark, we're working towards procedural fluency, which is that last stage of fluency. So we want to make sure that we are exposing them to lots of different strategies so that they can represent those numbers flexibly. So of course we want to start off with those concrete models when adding and subtracting fluently. Now in third grade we're going all the way up to 10,000, so using those base 10 blocks of units, rods, flats, and cubes would be really important to represent those numbers when adding and subtracting. It's also really important that students can use place value charts that help students when regrouping each place value. So we are able to, when adding or subtracting, bundling and then trading that in for the next place value using those concrete models.
Something that I know really helps my students is when you have those ones or the tens to physically show 10 to then be able to move them over, and especially when we get to the pictorial models, making sure that you show that it's a group and moving over helps them a lot understanding regrouping. So now we've moved on to the representational stage. We went from concrete and using those manipulatives. Now we want our students to draw a picture of what they created with their manipulatives. We want to make sure that students understand what happens when we regroup. So once they understand that in the concrete stage, now they can draw a picture of it and use their arrows or circle their groups, whatever makes sense to them so that they understand what they're doing when they're regrouping. This model on the right is an exact model of what you saw in the concrete stage. Now they're just drawing a visual model of it. The student on the left used a number line to decompose the different numbers, and they got the same sum. So whatever strategy works best for your students, as long as we're exposing them to the different types of strategies and models, it's really whatever works best for them.
Because this benchmark lends itself towards procedural fluency, you may see some abstract models as well among your students. Once students have an understanding of that place value relationship when regrouping, then they can make sense of those abstract strategies for solving addition and subtraction problems. Being able to see those numbers flexibly will help them become more efficient in their strategies. The model on the right is those same numbers used in the previous representational model, but now they're just using numbers. The ones on the left, the model on the left, the students was able to break apart that 642 flexibly to add easier.
So some misconceptions our students may have is simply lining up their place values. When we're dealing with multi-digit whole numbers, it's really easy to put a 2-digit number and a 3-digit number in the wrong place values and modeling it in a way that 2 tens would now be 200s. So in order to fix this, we're going to have our students use those place value charts and base 10 blocks to model the numbers that they see and write it in a number sentence as well so that they're able to make the connection between two tens and two hundreds and that they're not the same value. That way it can help us to line up those numbers better.
If abstract's too hard, go back to representational or concrete.
Another misconception that we see often in the classroom is subtracting the wrong digits. Some students may simply subtract the lesser digit from the greater digit regardless of its position in the number sentence. So 2 minus 4 they'll say is 2 because that way they're not regrouping and it's an easier problem for them to solve. If you see this in your students or in your classroom, we want to make sure that they experience more with the concrete and representational and using those place value charts to understand if I have 2 ones and I have to take away 4 ones, I need to regroup and get more ones in order to be able to take away and still have that positive value.
So as you can see, there's lots of different ways that we can represent adding and subtracting multi-digit numbers in third grade. We really want to meet the students where they're at and push them across those bridges to see it concretely, representationally, and abstract thinking. If one is too hard, we can always go bridge back to another representation. So if you think about what you did for your first task, do any of those models match yours? We want to make sure that we're bridging all of those C, R, and A models.
And remember, end game is not abstract. We don't want to get there as fast as possible. We want to meet our students where they're at. So if they need concrete or representational, we need to keep them where they're at while still pushing their thinking as well. Math Dive and About 5 for third grade addition and subtraction fluency. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.